Energized for the continuation of our day. If you were with us this morning, we had some really fantastic opening remarks from several of the leaders across the industry. We then had a really interesting panel on water considerations in the energy sector's decarbonization, led by Josh here. It was, if you weren't here, I highly recommend looking at the recording. We then had a great discussion with the British Standards Institute on net zero standards, and talked a little bit about implications for water, wastewater utilities there, but also a really informative recording if you have time to go back to it later on. Now we're going to take a shift from the conversation we had of water's role in net zero commitments that we talked about in the morning to what is water's role in setting our own net zero commitments. Particular focus this afternoon is on water, wastewater utilities. Now, water, wastewater utilities globally, it's estimated account for roughly 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions, although that number is estimated to still be on the low end. There's a lot that is not being accounted for on collections and process emissions. Of that 2%, roughly half, 1% or so, is related to the energy use of water and wastewater utilities. Big systems using a lot of energy, oftentimes the highest energy use in a city. The other half is the more tricky emissions related to wastewater process emissions. The methane and nitrous oxide coming off of the wastewater treatment system process. And this is where the monitoring of measurement is really tricky, and there's a lot of research being done today, both at the treatment plant as well as in the collection system. Now, water and wastewater utilities around the world have a lot of challenges as it is, meeting different regulatory environments or providing services. In some areas, aging infrastructure, in other areas, not enough infrastructure. So setting a net zero target is often maybe turned back at, depending on what region is laughed at, as, hey, I have these 10 other priorities on my list, and you want me to consider net zero commitments. And I think this is really where the why of this is really important. For me, and for what I hear often from utilities, is it's frustrating to come to a lot of conferences such as COP, such as others on the climate conversation, and hear about water in the adaptation space only. Often, water, wastewater utilities are the first defense on climate adaptation. They are feeling the impacts first. But rarely, if ever, are we talking about water systems as part of the solution. Broadly speaking, from freshwater solutions to utilities to downstream, there's a lot there. But the utilities have a unique role to play in leading on decarbonization and really showing what it means for other sectors to lead the way. An increasing amount of utilities are under the purview or of existing or upcoming commitments from the city or local governments in which they're operating in. Today, roughly 87 global utilities have their own explicit net zero commitments. On the scale of all the utilities out there, that's quite small, but these are often some of the major cities. And thousands more are under cities that have their own net zero commitments. So today's conversation is around two parts. First, how do we get water, wastewater utilities to consider and make greenhouse gas reduction commitments? And net zero terminology is used, and we talked about this morning what net zero means, but we're just considered any net zero reduction or any greenhouse gas reduction commitment. What do we need to do for utilities to make more commitments, make that a broader thing in the industry? And then the second part, where we really want to hone in today, is what's missing. In this room, we have a lot of players, many listed on this board, that are supporting utilities, whether that's member organizations, policy organizations, technology providers, others, that are supporting utilities in their journey. And so a key takeaway we want from this session to be is, what's missing to not only make that commitment, but then actually start to act on it. And there are certainly things missing, and we want to elevate those and bring those forward in our roundtable discussions. So, this is where it gets a little interactive. I have two esteemed partners here, HP from Grundfos and Dirk from Water Europe, that are going to help me in this journey. We're going to spend some time. We have 30 minutes allocated, but we don't need to use all that time. So if we wrap earlier, we can come back sooner. We're going to break into two groups and answer some questions that I'll list out in just a moment. And I want your perspectives from your experience and what you hear to these questions. We'll then have Dirk and HP join me up front to answer those questions, what they heard as part of this roundtable discussion, as well as their own perspectives. Now, I know you may not have signed up for an interactive session this afternoon, and I am seeing the look on your faces, but hear me out. We have been, how many panels have we all sat through this week already that have been us talking at each other? We really hope to make this conversational so that we can have actual helpful outcomes and go forward information that we, technology providers, member associations, regulatory support groups, can take home with us and actually implement to support utility decarbonization efforts. Okay, so the questions that you will be asked by your facilitators are the following. And I told them they have free will to go elsewhere if the conversation lends it. What do you believe are the greatest challenges for water, wastewater utilities to make net zero or other greenhouse gas reduction commitments? What are the current barriers when it comes to technology, financing, regulatory, awareness? Are there specific knowledge or training gaps at utilities on the topic of decarbonization? And what can organizations, like many in this room, do to support utilities in their commitments and do a better job of supporting utilities on their net zero journeys? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the room in half, roughly. Yes, Ines is pointing here. If you are on that side of her arm, you're going to form a little circle with your chairs in the back. If you are on my side of her arm, you're going to form a circle up here near the front. Hang with me, and we'll do this as best we can. You can do this.
Let's first do a quick pull the top. Okay. Okay. Very good. Let's go do a quick pull the top.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for experimenting with us. I hope that was a nice mix up from just listening to a panel to actually participating. So I appreciate your flexibility. Now we're going to discuss that. We have, two experts in the field here. I'll let them introduce themselves in just a minute. But we're going to recap what they heard as well as some of their perspectives on this question around utility decarbonization. So, Dirk, do you first mind introducing yourself really quick?
Go ahead.
Is this one working? Yes. So, hello everybody. My name is Dirk Krol. I'm the Executive Director of Water Europe, and in brief, Water Europe is a multi-stakeholder organization really representing the whole value chain of water with the ultimate ambition of achieving a water-smart society. We have about 270 members, and we were originally, I would say, initiated by the European Commission.
Thank you, Justin. I am HP Nanda. I am the CEO for Grundfos Water Utilities. So we are a business where 50% of our business is in groundwater and irrigation, and the remaining 50% of our business is in the municipal space.
Great. Thank you both. And I'm going to start with a question that wasn't on the list, but I'm going to just jump in quickly. Net zero, is it a priority for utilities? Yes or no?
Thank you. You read my mind. You read my mind
smart, guys.
Because that is the closing question I was asking to my teams. We got some yes, we got some not sure, and I think directionally we think it is a priority in some parts of the utilities in different regions of the world. Probably in other parts of the world, it is not such a high priority at this point of time.
Sure.
Same here. Actually, we concluded that actually utilities are confronted with quite a lot of priorities. Yeah, and depending on where you are, this priority of zero emissions could be higher up on the agenda, on the list of priority, or at the bottom end.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. So some of the questions. Can we put back to the slide with the questions on it? So we'll just have it for reference for everybody on the screen. Thank you so much. So, okay, utilities, the first step, and we had a really nice session from British Standards Institute, and it was the 7 steps of net zero. The first starts with baselining and then setting targets. So what are the greatest barriers that you're hearing from the group on utilities to make that move of actually setting a commitment out?
Well, I think that the first one comes back to your previous question, which has to do with the priority setting. Then you have to see, which has to do with what is the capacity of those utilities to actually do that, and that depends very much on are we dealing with a big utility, are we doing with a smaller utility, what is the financial opportunity of such a utility to deal with these challenges. But it's also about the regulatory drivers, because I would say if you want to really, even in a utility, if you have that perception that something needs to be done, of course you need, I would say, your governance to support that and drive that either in a direction of legal obligations and also the financial enabling conditions.
Thank you. So we had a bunch of different answers. One, we felt there are a number of utilities who probably don't measure their greenhouse gas emissions. So when we don't measure, then we talk about setting targets. Then we felt there are some carbon literacy as a topic is very low. Mm-hmm. So when you do not have the literacy of understanding how much of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions you generate, then that's probably something that needs to be done. And of course, there are utilities who are at the forefront. They have really understood exactly what emissions they are having. There is a regulatory framework in place. They have made their commitment, or the governments on behalf of them has made the commitment. And they are in a different place, and they need to figure out a way how to go and execute it.
Yeah, one of the things that came up and I overheard in the conversation too, I mean, the nuance between developed markets versus developing. I mean, we're a North America and Europe perspectives up here, but anything that came out of the group discussion on the differences between North America and Europe versus other regions of the world, perhaps utilities are still working on providing services.
Yeah, we did. We had a gentleman. He was our PhD in UK. He's from Nigeria, and he was making the comment. He's in UK. Probably this is a big topic every single day for the 12 utilities the country has.
Yeah.
You know, all the big utilities, highly professional. They have a game plan. There is a clear understanding, and the government framework also forces them to think about net zero. But probably in Nigeria, they have very different problem. They have a problem about providing water to people in the first place than worrying about net zero at this point of time. So I agree with you. As you look at the global north and the global south, probably some parts of the world it is more about finding a way to go to net zero, but for other parts of the world, it is still probably providing basic water access,
Absolutely.
and then worry about net zero at some point of time in future.
Same here. I mean, in our group, we also observe that, I would say, there is probably a difference in terms of capacity between, I would say, the more developed world and the still developing world. There is also, I would say, the issue of finance. And then we also came to the fact that, I would say, the governance model can also have an impact on the capacity to go for carbon neutrality. And there, I would say, of course, very simply said, you have the private model, you have the public model, but even there you can find different nuances between what I would more call the public professional, public political, the unique system where you have, I think, in England, where the water companies are fully privatized, and the more concession type of systems.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good nuance too, and I'll give a little U.S. perspective of, in the U.S. we have both investor-owned utilities and public utilities. And interestingly speaking, I was at a conference a couple months ago in California with the investor-owned utilities, so they're publicly traded utilities, actually were ahead of the public utilities because of ESG investing, and their investors were actually pressuring them before the publicly traded utilities. So some interesting nuance there.
If I perhaps can add to that, I think again there, what we usually see that in terms of innovation in the sector, I think mostly it's driven by legislation, then issues around water pricing, and lastly about the awareness of the water crisis. So in that, I think ambitious legislation can be an equalizer for the different governance models.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of the next question, break it up between the two of you. So utilities, they've made their commitment, they've started to measure, and now they're working their way towards their net zero goal. HP, technology barriers, what utilities seeing as a barrier to actually achieving their goals from the technology perspective?
Thank you. But from a technology company standpoint, we think we have all the technologies in the world to achieve net zero even today. We don't need new technologies. I just want to give you an example about the industry that all of us are part of. Today, if you think about going to net zero, if you take about your pumps, having the most hydraulic efficiency pumps and developing them, of course, we should do it because that is going to help us in energy efficiency. But having existing pumps combined with the most efficient motors, with variable frequency drive, with controllers, and then operating all the systems through a digital software to balance the demand and supply, we can probably get 60 or 70% less energy than what we are consuming today. 60, 70% less energy. And you look at the amount of money we can unleash. Patrick in the morning was talking about a mindset shift, that getting to net zero may not be cost prohibitive, it could be cost accretive. We can save money while going to net zero. And then we have the last 20, 30% of the energy, and probably that would be the renewable energy used by the grids to be supplying to the utilities. You can get there. So I don't think, Austin, to be honestly, technology today is a big barrier. With the existing technologies, you can do everything of net zero. Of course, the technology companies will keep bringing in new technologies, but probably it is something else.
Oh, great. Dirk, I'm going to ask you for both finance and then, of course, your space. Europe has been putting out a lot of leading regulation on this matter. What are current barriers or advances you're seeing in both the finance and the regulation area?
I think one of the biggest barriers in terms of policy regulation is that water is, I would say, politically weak. And why is it politically weak? Because water is such a fragmented sector. It's so much a transversal topic. Water is, I would say, a part of course, environmental policy, industrial policy, economic policy, agriculture policy. Usually it's placed somewhere in a corner of a Ministry of Environment or a Ministry of Agriculture, yeah, which I would say impedes basically holistic approach of the water issue on a national level or even on a European level. And that's really, I think, something we should address. We should make people aware that for at least for a while, water has to become a standalone topic, which is a major part of, I would say, our efforts to address climate change challenges.
No, that's good. HP, awareness, and I'm going to ask both of, awareness of decarbonization within the utilities, but also of awareness of water's role in emitting emissions from the broader public. Any barriers that you're seeing there?
Thank you. We were discussing, if you go to the common people in the street and ask them which industry is generating a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, and you do a Pareto of that, I don't think water would, as an industry will come in the top 20 or 30. They will be naming many other industry. I think that's a positive sign because we know we are not one of the industry that causes trouble for the society or the environment. That's a good starting point. But saying so, absolutely, your point is right. And the comment or the statistics you provided, even if we contribute 2% of the global greenhouse emissions, 80% of them come from the treatment systems and particularly the wastewater treatment systems. And we were having some comments. The word wastewater treatment plant is not a positively connotated English word in our society. People feel like it is an untouchable item. We should not be going near that place. It smells, it's all those things. So I do agree how to bring some public awareness that it is that necessary part of the evil, and we can turn this into a profit center by treating waste, creating many different outputs, and trade them to make money, and that can still be a good part of our ecosystem. So I do agree there is a little bit of work that needs to be done on the second part.
That's great. And as somebody who actually loves the smell of a wastewater treatment plant, I think something that I often reference is, we're estimating and we think we're underestimating utilities, water wastewater utilities contributing over 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's the same as the shipping industry. And the shipping industry has gone under a lot of public criticism. And, wastewater treatment plants releasing methane and nitrous oxides, which we know are more potent greenhouse gas emissions. We need to be ahead of the curve here for our own sake as a sector to show that we are really leading the way. All right, you guys are great. And I keep throwing you off course and you're just, you're working with me. All right, knowledge gaps at the utility level. Are there specific knowledge or training gaps that you see or that the teams saw exist today?
Yes, but if you don't mind, I first like to come back to your previous question about the awareness, because I think the awareness is a very important issue. And HP just said that the technological solutions are out there. I believe him, yeah. But I think the problem is most people in leading positions, and I'm again referring to the policy field, are not aware of that. And I think what is very important that companies like Grundfos or Xylem go to that political arena and show to politicians, yeah, what is possible, because that will also drive change.
That's good.
Yeah?
That's good.
So then about... Sorry,
now you got to answer my other question.
Yeah. I was not trying to escape. So your next the question was?
Knowledge or training gaps that exist at a utility level to both set commitments and then work towards
Well,
them.
I have quite a radical view on that. I think there are tremendous knowledge gaps, because I think if we really want... So yeah, if we really want to go in that green digital transition for utilities, I think let's say 15, 20 years, we will need a completely different composition of the human resources of utilities.
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, everything is going to be digitalized. The technologies we're going to use and we need to obey to will be completely different. So we will need completely different skills there.
If you ask me what worries me for utilities to get to net zero, this is the one. And here are the three reasons why. The demographics of the utilities across the world is off the charts. Probably people who have been there are in their late 50s, late 60s, and we are not the sexiest of industry to attract youth.
I disagree,
have-
but okay.
So we have a lot of people who are in the upper range of the demographics, and we are not able to bring in the youngsters. And we had one of our team members, he made a comment, unfortunately, because of the cost pressure, most of the utilities around the world have been reducing research, maybe reducing training, skill building, competency building in-house. So you don't have the upbringing and the upscaling of the existing workforce. We are not able to attract new workforce, and we know it is a matter of going to be time running out when some of those people will retire. So definitely, this is a worrisome trend.
Yeah.
I'd just like to add to that because I fully agree. But I think in that vulnerability, there is also an opportunity. Yeah, because of course, if we say that, and I think the figure often quoted is that the average age is around 55. Yeah, I mean that means these people will retire in the next 15 years. Yeah, that means that there is really an opportunity to go into complete transition to a new, I would say, skill base for the people that we will hire in the future. But of course, it does require that now we make the investments, yeah, in making water utilities attractive as a place to work.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. And I disagree. Wastewater isn't sexy, but well, okay. We have a number of organizations here: technology providers, Grundfossilum, Water Europe, of course, with European and Agua in the room, many others. What should the organizations on this wall be doing better to support utilities to both make commitments and then achieve those commitments on net zero or greenhouse gas reductions?
Or I can kick off? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I mean, of course, I think in that sense, every organization has to reason from its own perspective and I would say key niche. In our case, I think where we can really, and I basically already mentioned it, but where we can really play an important role, and of course it's a European context, but it's really making sure that we include in new policies, in new directives, regulations, the drivers for the uptake of innovative solutions. And I think you really need to take into account that there are windows of opportunity, yeah, that last 30 years. I mean, for example, we've been now working very hard on the recast of the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive, which is a very important directive in the European context. I mean, this recast comes after 30 years of the previous edition, which means that basically you could say once in 30 years there is that window of opportunity. The same goes with investment cycles in infrastructure, which in the, I would say, utility sector are quite long. So you need to be there at the right place with the new solutions, with the new approach to seize that opportunity. The same, I would say, goes also with financing opportunities. So that's, I think, an important element.
So I think today is a momentous day for me. And it goes back to what I said in the morning, and Patrick elaborated on that one. I think, how do we come together as ecosystem players and proactively work with everybody with open-mindedness, collaboration, and the spirit that this is the opportunity of the lifetime to make a difference. If you think about, even in the utilities, probably the comment is in Australia, the collaboration across the utilities is super strong. Whereas probably in the United States, all our 54,000 utilities are on their own. There is little collaboration. So that is why whether waiting for regulation, waiting for the utilities to collaborate, I don't think it's a smart move. But we, figuring out a mechanism, and I really, my heartfelt thanks to you and Ines and Aqua and K-Water, some merit has to start. And it starts here with COP28 here today, that how do we keep this spirit and bring others on board and then say, hey, we can make a difference.
Couldn't agree more. And
Bravo.
I obviously have a view here, and I think that's exactly aligned, HP, of, talking to utilities, it can be very isolating to be running a utility in a community and often not realize all the resources available to you. And that is, the onus is on us as member organizations, as technology providers, others, to bring together the platform of resource sharing, because we all win when we're supporting utilities to achieve their environmental goals. I think that's all I have. So I really appreciate my panelists for letting me throw more than a few curveballs at them and then playing along with such spirit. And thank you to you all for participating. I hope this was a fun mix-up in the COP agenda to actually have some conversation and outputs. So thank you, and we will be back at now. In, sorry? The wrap-up session is at, check the time?
Because we were faster on this.
Oh, we were pretty fast, yeah.
So we have the high-level wrap-up at 3:45.
Okay, so at 3:45, we'll kick off the wrap-up, but thank you so much.
Thank you.